Senator. Thank you, Senator. Thank you to all our speakers, Jessica in particular, for her leadership of time and place, and the Senator reinforcing the significance of this interdependence, this relationship, this mutuality that we share on the other side of the border and those here. I'm back down here. We've been on a tour across the state, had the privilege of being in Fresno with former Mayor Swearengin, development strategy that's place-based, regional in its approach, a focus on building capacity in all of our diverse and unique regions across this state. With Go a week ago and down here today talking about the partnerships in this region, particularly in San Diego in Imperial County, as part of this economic and workforce development strategy. I'll just remind people this strategy we initiated a year and a half or so ago, investing $5 million in developing place plans or plans that are unique to the distinctions that define the best of each region, the strengths and weaknesses identified. They were bolstered with $14 million of funding each region to move quickly on early projects, pre-development projects. And in January, there's $120 million of grant funding that is available for each of these 13 regions as it relates to expediting and moving some of their economic priorities forward. So this is something the state has never done. This is something that we've been working very closely with regions from the border, Redwood Coast, to here, the southern border in Southern California. With that, let me just reference, just got on as we were driving over with our State Office of Emergency. We've now put together what we refer to as our SOC. We've referred all our a 7.0 earthquake in Northern California. There was a tsunami warning that came out. That tsunami warning was lifted. It is part of a protocol, tsunami warnings, anytime you're 5.0 or greater around a coastal region, typically goes into effect. It allows us to back off through abundance of caution. That was lifted. Nonetheless, we're concerned about damage, particularly in the northern part of the state, in Del Norte and Mendocino and Humboldt County. As a consequence of that, I just signed off on a state of emergency, a declaration that will allow us to provide more resources, provide some of our National Guard resources as needed, access to state fairgrounds, waiving some contractual obligations for that part of the state. It's another reminder of the state that we live in and the state of mind that we need to bring reality here in the state of California in terms of being at this time, but our teams are working collaboratively with the teams on the ground, and I just want to thank everybody, particularly our local law work and working through their protocols as quickly and efficiently as they have to date, and that over the course of the next few hours and clearly over the course of the next few days. Look, I came down here after a few days on the road, as I referenced, in Fresno, and opportunities here in this region, but also to highlight this project that we've been talking about since the 1990s. We've been talking about this Otay East port of literally the late 1990s. There have been formal efforts that date back to 2014 that codified with Sandag and with Caltrans, the state of California, our Mexican counterparts to move this project forward, to talk about the border a moment ago. We're finally here to make the announcement that we're going to in the next few weeks. We've identified a contractor. We're going to be moving forward with building the roads behind to get down to this section of the border. And we are in the final phases, working very collaboratively with the White House and Mayorkas and the team by the end of the month. On this multi-year economic development opportunity. As I say, it's decades in the making. It's been a stubborn project for one reason and one reason alone, full disclosure, operational questions of how we manage this new port of entry and the funding that comes from actively unfolding in real time as it relates to the details of the agreement that we're working with the White House. We put out a statement today with Mayorkas, joint statement between the state and our federal partners. That's the first time we've been able to get to this point to more formalize or more formally advance the formalized agreements. But again, the key date's going to be the end of this month as moving forward. But that's not stopping Caltrans. They've identified some contractors. You're going to start seeing the earth movers out here. You're going to start finally seeing things take shape and things happening. So this is a good news project. A long time, as I say, decades in the making, and I think paints a different picture than a lot of the pictures that are painted as it relates to border conversations in this country. Just briefly on that, there's a reason you see our in my left in front of you. I'm really proud of the work the National Guard's done down here. You know, for many, we've had hundreds and hundreds of National Guardsmen and women support of the state of California doing work to support CBP on counter narcotics, specifically around fentanyl, but not fentanyl. Those counter narcotics efforts led by the National Guard, just in 2023, they were successful in seizing 62,000 pounds statewide of fentanyl. I've seen firsthand this operation at 5 ports of entry along the border, about 70 National Guard men and women at each of these ports of entry, producing exceptional results. They have been embraced enthusiastically by our Border Patrol, and they've provided the kind of resourcefulness that only the National Guard can provide. Today, we're announcing we're going to increase that operation and focus not just on the existing flow coming north into the state of California into the United States, but looking at the flow going south, particularly as it relates to illicit money and as it relates to weapons. A big part of what happens on the other side of the border as it relates to violence is happening with American-made weapons that come south to Mexico from America. And we need to do a better job to attach a focus of responsibility and energy in that space. There have been good things that have been happening already with the National Guard, expanding that with our intelligence gathering operations, analytics work that the National Guard is known for, and we're excited about that announcement today as well. Third, we're also more publicly announcing, or at least formalizing, at least public, that we have applied with the State Department to formalize a National Guard partnership very similar to the one we have in Ukraine. Many of you may not know this. The beginning of the war in Ukraine, President Zelensky, who'd been out in California even prior to the war, was highlighting the partnership between the state of California, our National Guard, and the work they were doing to help train and support the military in Ukraine. We want to build on that partnership with Mexico. And we have formalized that application. It's already in with the State Department to begin the process of approvals that will allow us to build on these existing partnerships that are well established for years with our National Guard and formalize it and scale it to the next level as it relates to what's happening north and south of the border wall you see behind me. So that's the third announcement that we wanted to share with you today as well. And finally, I'd be remiss because it goes to the subtext of what you heard from our speakers. There's no state that will be impacted more and has been already impacted more by this tariff conversation, this tax conversation that the is having. The impact's already being felt. We have seen the benefits of the USMCA as it relates to nearshoring. We've seen the benefits of these partnerships, and we have seen the economic output that has been extraordinary. That momentum, particularly as it relates to the diversification of supply chains, particularly as it relates to those relationships in China, that is now firmly in question as it relates to the impacts of a proposed 25% tax or tariff on goods coming from Mexico. That would lead, as an example, don't take my word for it, any objective analysis, upwards of you having to spend $3,000 more to purchase a car coming from Mexico if that tariff is indeed imposed. It begs the question, is the president-elect embarrassed by his own leadership as it relates to what he often describes as USMCA? Did he do something wrong with that agreement that now he wants to throw it out completely and impose 25% tax increase on the American people? No state more impacted by that, no region more impacted by that. Small businesses that will lose customers, jobs that will be lost, the inflationary impacts on every single one of you, the cost of food that will go up, cost of tomatoes at the supermarket, the vegetables, over half that come in from Mexico, the impacts of retaliatory trade on the ag community. No state more impacted by the retaliatory impacts than the state of California. Just consider a simple fact that dependent industry in the great state of California, that 43% of just 3 products exported around the world, almonds and dairy, pistachios, you can add walnuts into that, will be impacted significantly. And those farmers, ranchers, will be impacted disproportionately if these tariffs go into effect. And I didn't even bring up the mass deportation components of it. You know better than I do. When you look at farm workers, the last estimate, roughly half are undocumented. Close to 90% have been in the state for years and years and years. They're not going back and forth. Close to 60% have kids. The impacts of mass deportation on the cost of food in this state, in this nation, are off the charts. This is serious business. And so I just want to highlight that as well. No state more impacted. Construction industry. Nationwide, we estimate 13 folks out there are undocumented. We know in states like California, it's significantly higher. The impact to housing costs. This is serious business. And so this is a serious moment in California's history, region that defines Baja in California, the dynamism that's been well established here as it relates to co-creation, creativity, the entrepreneurial spirit that's defined between the 2 regions, North and South, but also as it relates to the impact on the American people and families all across this nation. Final word, don't think for a second this won't impact you. 90% of these tariffs will impact bottom of our economic chain, meaning lower wage workers that pay over half of these taxes. So this is a regressive tax that will have profound impact on progress and momentum that we're starting to enjoy in the tentpole of the American economy. $3.89 trillion a year economy. There is no economic growth in America without the success of this region and the state of California. 71%, by the way, of America's output are that seem to be under assault, at least rhetorically, by the president-elect. Forgive me, I didn't want to make this too political. And I know there's a lot of mixed status here as it relates to different points of view politically. But I hope we can all agree the impacts on this region and your pocketbook will universally be felt regardless of your politics. That's a betrayal that needs to be revealed. to those that embraced and supported this agenda. That betrayal is taking place in real time. You are being betrayed by these policies. The impact exists now, even before these tariffs have been imposed. That's not something you should take my word for it. I just met with leaders in the business community that said already the momentum has been impacted as it relates to nearshoring in anticipation with the uncertainty of these tariffs. So that is the final commentary in these long-winded remarks. But I care about this state. We care about border security, but we also care about economic security, and we care about two-way trade, and we care about our partners on the other side of this border that have well-established partnerships. And I'll just say one final and just the former trade mission with the San Diego Chamber of Commerce in Mexico with hundreds of business leaders. And it's always nice to be back here to be reminded we have leaders, regardless of political stripes, in the business community that understand the stakes of the debate and the stakes of the. We're happy to answer any questions. And if